Hi, I'm Matthew Chrisman. I work at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Alice König, who works at the University of St. Andrews. And we are members of a team of people who've been working with the Young Academy of Scotland on the topic of responsible debate. Alice, maybe you could tell folks a little bit about what YAS is and how we got involved with this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Young Academy of Scotland was founded in 2011, and it brings together young professionals from lots of different sectors. So from academia, business, the third sector, local and national government, industry, and so on, to work together on projects that benefit Scotland and the wider world. And in a nutshell, the Young Academy of Scotland's mission is to help Scotland's people and policymakers build a future that is more equal, more enterprising, sustainable, healthier, smarter, and internationally connected. And as well as tackling pressing issues that affect society today, we think a lot about future challenges, from climate change to the growing gap between rich and poor, to fake news, to the complex ethics of artificial intelligence. And one thing that is central to addressing any challenge, whether it's big or small, whether it's local or global, is our ability to discuss the problems, to share our concerns, and to cooperate on solutions in respectful and responsible ways. But as any political observer will acknowledge, respectful and responsible debate has been increasingly scarce in recent years. So we've had a series of elections and referenda, both in the UK and beyond, which have really ended up revolving around very polarised viewpoints, with what we've seen is people on different sides becoming more and more entrenched in their competing positions. Internet obviously makes it possible to share information more widely than ever, but that too has led to some problematic trends. So, for example, digital algorithms tend to push different kinds of information to different groups of people. And the result is that people debate within increasingly isolated bubbles sometimes. And that can mean that they reinforce their strongly held positions rather than questioning their own beliefs. We see politicians sneering at each other for changing their minds, calling each other out for doing a U-turn, rather than celebrating the fact that someone has rethought their position and adjusted their line on something after reflecting about it. In politics, in online discussion spaces and elsewhere, we've been witnessing increasingly aggressive, toxic forms of debate, which are a real barrier to progress. And that's in the context of a world where we desperately need to cooperate and to talk constructively with people from different viewpoints and different positions to address the huge challenges that we face. It's in that context that the Young Academy of Scotland became really interested in debate and responsible debate, and in thinking about ways to agree and disagree with each other. And that led us to putting a team together and developing our charter for responsible debate, which maybe you can say a few words about.
Yeah, sure. So it was a few years ago that we were having these discussions about mainly political debate, but other sorts of debate as well. And I just happened to be talking to my kids when they came home from school, and they had this thing was like a charter for sustainable schools that they had developed at their school, and they'd sort of talked about what principles to write down in this charter and how to live by in this charter. And I thought, oh well, couldn't there also be a charter for responsible debate? And I suggested this idea to Alice and others in the Young Academy of Scotland, and we started talking about, oh yeah, that would be an interesting way to a framework through which we could think about what are the right principles or good principles by which to engage in contentious conversations, contentious debates, topics where we deeply disagree. And so what we did to make that charter, we didn't just try to make it up ourselves, but we invited in politicians, news media, people who host debates, activists and campaigners who try to influence public debate, academics who kind of think about the psychology and the politics of debate. So we invited in 10 such people, and we asked them each to propose one or two principles for a future charter for responsible debate. They, of course, all proposed two principles, so we had 20 principles, which seemed to be a bit long for a charter. And also, some of them overlapped, and some of them had sort of technical language in them. And so we spent the next year or so honing those principles by talking about them within the Young Academy, but also taking them to various public events. We did an event at the Scottish Parliament. We did an event at various book festivals, at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where we would just sort of try out some of these principles and see what people thought about them and use the feedback we got from people to refine those principles. So over the course of that sort of year and a half, we went from 20 principles down to 9, and last year we published our charter of 9 principles for responsible debate. And we don't think of that as a final statement of how to debate, but rather as a kind of living document to get people talking about it. And that was one of the things we found was most interesting, was how just having that conversation then made people engage, I think, in debate in a more responsible and kind of constructive way. That was the origin of our charter. And when we published it, one thing we did was we challenged the leaders of the parliamentary parties in the Scottish Parliament to endorse it or sign on to it, and many of them did. And we kind of a list of the different politicians who signed the charter. But the charter is not just for politics. And Alice, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about other arenas in which the charter might be useful.
I think one of the important things to understand about the Charter is that it's a starting point. It's a stimulus for discussion and for thinking more and more about the ways in which we debate with us. So the principles are prompts, but prompts for us then to explore, discuss, and try them out in all sorts of different areas. And ultimately, what we hope to achieve is a culture shift, as you say, not just in politics, but in all sorts of different areas of life. So we thought that it was really important to explore the ways in which debate happens responsibly and perhaps less responsibly in all sorts of different sectors and settings. So in our report, we look, for example, at patterns of debate in migration. We look at the ways in which debate operates in the legal setting. We look at different aspects of debate in religious contexts as well. There is a chapter that looks at advocacy and quiet campaigning in the human rights space, and the way in which different kinds of debates have different kinds of traction when you're campaigning rather than discussing or trying to find common purpose. We've got a chapter, for example, as well, looking at the empowering ways in which children can be encouraged to find their voice, but find their voice in all sorts of different ways, not just through competitive debating societies, but through more collaborative, constructive kinds of conversation. A focus on the things they have in common is perhaps more important than the things they disagree about. So our report contains chapters that look at responsible debate in all sorts of sectors of life, and also some calls to action. So I'm sure everyone listening to this has at some point had an email that has made them feel very cross or very angry. And so we have a little section that gets us thinking about what responsible debate on email actually looks like, and drawing on some of the individual principles in the Charter about the use of different kinds of language, emotional or non-emotional language, for example, the open-mindedness, the importance of actually trying to see a position from someone else's perspective, and not just from your own sort of riled position. Family arguments is also a little area that we kind of look at. Emotions can run high. People can focus on winning the point rather than hearing, rather than listening. And one of the principles in our Charter is about the power of listening non-judgmentally. We have some conversation in the report about social media spaces, and not just what individuals can do on social media in their own interactions, but the ways in which actually we might not be bystanders to debates that are sort of raging in hostile, aggressive, toxic ways on social media, but ways in which we might actually pull debate back to evidence. We can move more towards finding common ground and working out what it is that we agree on, and working back from there rather than focusing on all the points of disagreement. The Charter really encourages people to think about the applications of responsible debate in everyday life, in the workplace, in the home, in the school classroom, in the university setting, and as well as in public spheres, as well as in media, social media, traditional media, and in political spaces. And as I say, it's a call to action because together we can generate a real culture change around responsible or irresponsible debate if we really keep experimenting with and talking about the principles in our Charter.
We've teamed up with the Ethics Cup, which is a debate competition not conceived of in the traditional way, but conceived of as one that prizes careful listening and finding points of consensus or points of possible constructive agreement. This is a nationwide competition in the UK. And our thought was that these principles could be studied and used by people preparing for the Ethics Cup, and also more generally by people who are thinking in school settings about responsible debate. And so what we've done is we've teamed up with the Ethics Cup, and we're developing a series of worksheets that students can work through to think about some of the key concepts that are involved in thinking carefully about responsible debate, using the principles from our charter as the kind of framework on which to think about those concepts. We're also recording a number of videos that involve interviews with or discussions with different experts on different aspects of responsible debate and the principles in our charter. This is going to be the first kind of introductory video of this set of videos, and then after this will come other videos where Alice or myself or other people within Yaz and the Ethics Cup talk to people about responsible debate. I encourage you to watch those videos as well. Thanks very much.